Hey guys, and today I'm going to do my tips for round 21. First up we have Hawthorn and Collingwood at the MCG with what will be a potential blockbuster based on both sides' form at the moment. Last week Hawthorn had a decent victory over the Saints, winning by 46 points in a boring contest, well that's how I'll describe it. And Collingwood surprised a few people again, beating the Swans at ANZ Stadium by 29 points. And the last time these sides went up against each other, it was Hawthorn pretty comfortably by 55 points. And I think the last 4 times they've played, they've got a win against them, so seemingly they've got a bit of a hoodoo over them at the moment. Whilst Collingwood have been an impressive touch recently, Hawthorn's just one of those sides that has the number over Collingwood, and they don't have to be always firing to beat the Pies as well, so I think they can do it comfortably again. I'm going to tip the Hawks by 30 points. Richmond fighted out with Carlton at the MCG early Saturday afternoon. Last week Richmond they were okay against the Lions. In the end, they didn't really play the second half, but they won by 23 points against Brisbane. And Carlton just couldn't quite have enough firepower to beat the competitive Bulldogs, and they went down to them. And the last time these sides went head-to-head, it was Richmond recording a 5-point victory, and I think that's the first time they've beaten the Blues since 2008, so well done to them for that. Carlton have been hampered with injuries, and they just don't look the goods this season. Tigers should notch up another win here and, well, maybe even make a charge for the top 4. It's unlikely but not impossible. I'm going to tip the Tigers by 26 points. Port Adelaide and Gold Coast clash at Amy Stadium on the Saturday afternoon. Last week Port Adelaide were alright against Geelong. They came back hard in the last quarter. They couldn't quite get the win in the end, but they were still pretty good. And Gold Coast did enough to win at home, and they beat the Demons by 23 points. The last encounter between these sides, it was Port Adelaide doing it pretty comfortably at Metricon Stadium, beating Gold Coast by 38 points. Port Adelaide have been so competitive at home. They've only lost 3 games there, and I think all the pretty much top sides. I could see Gold Coast being competitive, but I think Port will be too classy and should get the win. I'm going to tip Port by 19 points. Essendon faced North Melbourne at Adelaide Stadium late Saturday afternoon. Last week Essendon got plummeted by the Eagles by 9 goals at Etihad, and yeah, they were just shocking. It just seems the starters taken over. And then North Melbourne, on the other hand, they were close at Amy Stadium. They were pretty good, but went down by 9 points in the end to Adelaide. And the last time these sides went up against each other, it was North Melbourne on top of the Bombers by 24 points. It's become evident in the last few weeks that the Asada investigation has taken its toll and essentially broken the Bombers. They just haven't been performing. The Roos also know how to play very well at Etihad. Geelong found out about that a few weeks ago. And yeah, I reckon they'll thrash them this week. It seems to be the pattern at the moment. So I'm going to tip North Melbourne by 62 points. Brisbane host GWS at the Gabba. Last week Brisbane weren't quite good enough for the Tigers. And GWS, well, they got thrashed at Patterson Stadium, and that's putting it lightly, that's sugarcoating it. And last time these sides went head-to-head, it was Brisbane pretty easily by 92 points. There's no contest here. I'm going to tip Brisbane by 78 points. A big game here. Geelong go to Patterson Stadium to take on West Coast on the Saturday night. Last week, Geelong, they led by 10 goals at one stage, and yeah, they only won by 25 points in the end, so very lazy, lacklustre last quarter. And yeah, West Coast gave the Bombers a bit of a lesson at Etihad Stadium, winning by 53 points. And the last time these sides went up against each other, it was West Coast sneaking home at Patterson Stadium with a 5-point win. Geelong have had problems travelling recently. They've lost their last 3 games at Patterson Stadium, which is a little bit unlike them. They just can't seem to find a win in the West. The last month's been pretty flat too. And West Coast, even though they're 10th, I think they're a fair chance on this occasion. They just know how to play the Cats at home. I'm going to tip the Eagles here. I just don't think Geelong are quite up to it at the moment. They've just been so lazy for a fair while. I'm going to go with the Eagles by 2 points. Melbourne host the rampaging Dockers at the MCG. Last week, Melbourne went down to the Gold Coast Suns at Metricon by 23 points, and Fremantle gave the Giants an absolute thumping. They won by 113 points. The last time these sides encountered, it was Fremantle very easily winning by 90 points. It should be a relatively elementary result. I'm going to tip Fremantle by 60 points. Sydney and St Kilda will go head-to-head at the SCG on the Sunday. Last week, Sydney, well, they got a bit of a upset loss to Collingwood. And St Kilda, they were just never a match for the Hawks. They went down by 46 points. The last encounter between these sides, it was Sydney winning by 16 points over in New Zealand. Sydney will be keen as beans to get back on the winners list, and they so often do after a bit upsetting losses. I'm going to tip Sydney by 34 points. The last game of the round is the Western Bulldogs and Adelaide fighting it out at Etihad Stadium late Saturday afternoon. Last week, the Western Bulldogs scored a nice 28-point victory against Carlton, and Adelaide were pretty cutsy in their performance. They grinded home a 9-point win against the Kangaroos, and the last time between these sides, it was Adelaide by 52 points at Amy Stadium. It's a 50-50 game to a degree, but I've been a big fan of the Bulldogs' very competitive performances as of late. And yeah, I think the last two encounters at Etihad Stadium have gone the Bulldogs' way. Overall, the Crows have won the last two, and before that, the Western Bulldogs have won the three previous to that. I like the Dogs here. They haven't let me down the last few weeks. They've been pretty good to watch. I'm going to tip the Bulldogs by 13 points. So those are my tips for round 21. Feel free to comment your tips. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you guys all soon.